All right, I'm here with Dr. Kien Vuu. He is a concierge performance and longevity physician. He specializes in human optimization, regenerative medicine. He's also the best-selling author of The Thrive State. And if you guys are watching live, you can see that book in the background. Dr. Kien Vuu, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love the energy and I can't wait to dive in.
Yeah, man, I am super excited to talk to you. I was saying before we jumped online that your book does a great job of just really distilling down like these 7 big pillars of like anybody. I don't care where you're at in your health. If you're like an avid biohacker like myself, and you're someone who's, got a lot of things dialed in, or even someone you're just starting off your health journey, you did a great job of just like, hey, here's like 7 big things that you need to worry about. And if you can really dial these in, you're going to be in optimal health. But the amazing thing about you is it wasn't always that way. And here you are, you started off as a conventional doctor, and now you moved into this longevity, anti-aging space. But again, your health wasn't always optimal. So can you kind of tell everybody like how that started and like kind of where you've moved to now?
Yeah, great question. I don't give the story any justice if I didn't talk about, my childhood, because so many people don't realize that how they grow up lends them to live a life that might not be the most uh, congruent with the life that they want to live, including their health. And so I was born in post-war Vietnam. I was on a refugee boat for 8 months, surviving dysentery. I had rickets when I was a child. I spent another 3 months in a refugee camp, and I came to America at the age of 2. And coming to America, I was constantly teased for the holes in my hand-me-down clothes, for the stinky food my mom sent me to school with. I got a lot of "go back to your home country, Chinky," like all
Wow.
those messages. And every day I remember just not liking the skin I was in. I didn't feel like I could be myself. And so there were a lot of these messages of I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I need X to feel loved. And for me, it was like thinking that success would bring that to me. And so growing up, I was always striving to be quote unquote successful so I could receive love. And I actually wanted to be a actor or something when I was a child, but my mom was like, "Look, we didn't travel across the world for you to become an entertainer. All right, so you could be a doctor, an MD, a physician, you choose."
Well,
And so,
thanks to Instagram Reels, you now are that comedic doctor.
right,
So yeah,
right.
thank God. Yeah.
So, but I went to medical school, and in medical school, again, I was always striving to achieve, be the best in my class. Went into a very competitive residency, which is radiology, and then also interventional radiology. And again, kept striving. I wanted to be the top of the hospital, wanted to travel around the world to speak at conferences. And I accomplished all that. Bought a fancy car, bought a fancy house, thinking all of that would make me happy. And basically 5 years into my attending career, I looked myself in the mirror and I was overweight. I was diabetic. I had high blood pressure. I was on prescription medications. And I realized I didn't learn in medical school how to be well, how to be,
Mm.
I knew how to like treat these symptoms. I knew how to patch things up once people lived a life that created disease. And I didn't really even know that. We learn lifestyle in medical school is beneficial, but it was more just lip service. I mean, doctors aren't trained to actually create behavioral change in others, which is why I think health coaches play such an important role in the industry today. And so
Yeah.
what I did when I found that that was the case, I really had a rough year. Number one, I got all those diagnoses. I had an uncle pass away from cancer. I had a person I thought I was going to marry leave me for another man because I was
Mm.
so focused on creating success
Wow.
that I really neglected everything else. I neglected my relationships. I neglected, certainly my health. I neglected just who I am as a person. Like, what is Kien Vuu? What does he want to do? I forgot all of those things,
Yeah.
chasing this whole thing called success. And it became a poster child of a very famous Dalai Lama quote when he was asked, what he found most interesting about humanity. And he said, man, because he would sacrifice his health in order to make money and then sacrifice his money to recuperate his health.
Mm.
And I find that to be the case for so many people I work with now is they chase this thing that they think would bring them happiness, or maybe a sense of worthiness, that they just neglect everything else. And now they're just trying to find health. And And fortunately, I had a patient when I was, overweight. I was remember rounding the hospital, and I was supposed to drain 10 liters of fluid from this guy. He's a 41-year-old guy with pancreatic cancer, and he knows he's going to die. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to step in this room. I better pull myself together. I was feeling sorry for myself, but this guy has it worse. So
Yeah.
let me brace myself so I could help this guy. And then walk in the room. This guy, Ishmael, just smiles. Hey, Doc, how you doing, man? I'm going to be so relieved after you get all this fluid off of me. Doc, you won't believe it. And I just remember feeling all this love and positivity from him. And I just had to ask him, I said, Ishmael, how are you so positive right now? And he says, Doc, it's simple. It wasn't always this way, but I used to live this stressed out lifestyle and it just wasn't me. But now I feel like in any moment I can choose to, I could choose how I show up every day. And I choose to show up with love and with positivity. And that moment right there just made me wake up to the fact that, was I really choosing my own life, or did I live the life of the matrix I was programmed to live?
Yeah.
And he really woke me up. And when he did that, I really did a deep dive into how I was going to reverse my disease. I went to my first biohacking conference. I did a fellowship in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. I studied, the world's longest lived populations. And in a very short period of time, in 6 months, I reversed my diabetes, got off on all my meds, and now I'm able to do it much, much faster for my concierge clients. So that was really my road to becoming a performance and longevity doc was really, from, having disease myself. And
Yeah.
here's the awesome thing is if you can recognize that you're able to reverse that disease, the side effect of living life that way is optimal health, longevity, and peak performance.
Dude, crushed it. So many things, I talk to a lot of clients and people myself, and I tell them there's no such thing as this thing we like to compartmentalize, like work-life balance, Oh, I'm driving a Ferrari and I make millions of dollars, but my health sucks. Or I drive a Ferrari and make millions of dollars, but my marriage sucks. My relationship with my son sucks. Like all of those are leaking and bleeding into other areas in your life. And if you don't have those things, like you said, dialed in, you could be making $2 million. You could be even doing better and even doing more in the world, having more impact if your health was in order and the mindset was in order, right? So I love that you said that. It was just so powerful, man. And it also reminds me what one of our good mutual friends, David Meltzer, talks about, right? Like a sick person has only one wish, and that's to be healthy.
Yeah.
A healthy person gets as many wishes as they want. And
Absolutely.
Right?
Health is the ultimate wealth. And honestly, when you are vibrant, when you're in this thrive state, people feel it. So when you live your life just with a vibrancy and really the life you're meant to live, I think everything else just comes easier. I find myself now being approached by people like yourself to be on podcasts, on TV shows, and things like that. And that's just really living life that's more aligned with, how humans are supposed to be. And really, my book is going through those 7 areas. When we looked at where people live the longest all over the world, they didn't have access to biohacking. They didn't have access to aura rings or stem cells and things like that. And, I used to wonder why that was. Well, it turns out that basically how we live our life creates this energetic field around us. You could sense that. And that energy, I call this the bioenergetic state. It reaches to our DNA, and our DNA is listening moment to moment of this energy that's around it. If it's in a positive field in this thrive state, our DNA actually gives us the ability to heal, to repair, for longevity, for peak performance. If your cells think that you are in danger, like there's a saber-toothed tiger running behind you, they're going to shrink down and go, okay, we got to prepare for battle. Inflammation goes up, immunity goes down. That's when you get chronic symptoms and chronic disease. I was basically in a stress state as a full-time interventional radiologist. And it was finding myself, finding the things I was passionate about again, and reconnecting with people and serving. That's when I got into the thrive state. And that's why I want to share that message with people out there.
Yeah, so huge. I wanted to ask you too, are you still doing the radiology, the interventional radiology part-time as well as the concierge?
Yeah, so I wear multiple different hats. I feel
look at you, you're in scrubs right now, man. So yeah, you're doing it.
Yeah, I still do interventional radiology at the hospital, and I'm really fortunate now because they've asked me to join wellness committees, and I find that teaching residents of my story will give them a different perspective.
Mm.
I don't think conventional medicine, you know, you don't throw out the what's the word? You don't throw out the
The
baby.
baby with the bathwater, I
Here
think.
we go. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
There's a role for that. I mean, conventional medicine, has been able to help people extend life for sure. The only thing is a lot of drivers of chronic disease happens with the way we live our life. So let's start there. There are other things that drive disease, like chronic infections, like heavy metals and things like that, and there'll always be a place for conventional medicine. It's just let's gain back control of what we can control. And I believe if we can focus on how we live our life, our chances of getting chronic disease diminish a lot. But there's always going to be a role of conventional medicine. And some of the work that I do in the hospital still, I find to be very good work. I just wish that some of those patients got a chance to hear my message 10 years before they ended up where they ended up.
Yeah. Just really quickly, talk about like your field, because it's actually, I find it fascinating. And I was listening to you on another podcast talk about, I was like, wow, like that's some really technical stuff that you're doing and like helping people. I mean, just people that don't know when I think of radiology, I think of just x-rays. That's in my head, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe you could just kind of explain that briefly.
Sure. I'm actually going to be talking about this in the biohacking conference that I actually chose a biohacking medical specialty. So, as you know, radiology is medical imaging. It is ultrasounds, x-rays, CT scans, MRIs, PET scans. It's basically all the technology to look inside the body to see what's going on. And the diagnostic radiologist will have to be able to interpret all those images, know what disease looks like in the body to make a diagnosis.
Mm.
Interventional radiology is a subset of that. It's a surgical subspecialty of radiology where we use medical imaging to guide minimally invasive procedures. For example, I can get into any blood vessel in the body and travel through that blood vessel under x-ray guidance. And there might be a vessel that goes into a tumor that you can put in chemotherapy or beads that actually shrink up the vasculature to that tumor and shrink it down. There are blood vessels that are bleeding, for example. Somebody comes in the middle of the night bleeding out of a blood vessel. Well, we could drive to that blood vessel that's bleeding and plug it up to stop the bleeding. If there's
Fascinating.
a tumor or mass that we see on imaging, we can actually guide a needle to sample that mass without having to open the patient up. And so lots of these type of procedures that we do basically with a small little needle entryway without having to crack open a patient. So it's really, really cool. Definitely, if there was a biohacking specialty in medicine, it would be interventional radiology.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I wanted to talk to you briefly about the 7 pillars that you lay out on your book. Now, we don't have time to go through all 7 pillars. You guys, if you want the book, go get the book. And actually, I'm going to give you I'll do the pre-roll. We'll talk about some of the free stuff that Dr. Vuu is going to give you. But when you think about your book and you think about those pillars, is there one that just stands out to you more than any of the others? Or maybe for someone just getting started with their health and they come and see you and you're like, listen, this is the one, you got to do this first. Like get this organized first.
Yeah, everybody is a little bit different. And the thing that I would say should be the first step for anybody is understand these 7 pillars. If you understand the 7 pillars, you know what really drives health. I stand firm that if people understand these 7 pillars and really audit their life in these 7 pillars, you could pretty much be your own doctor. You could heal yourself with that. I mean, beyond the 7 pillars, there would just be like infections, maybe some toxins and other things that maybe a functional medicine doctor could help you with. But if you focus on the 7 pillars, your chances of getting any type of chronic disease is very low. And if you optimize these 7 pillars, man, you will have optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. So understand those things. And so I think the easiest thing for people to start is whatever's going to be easy for them. What are the 7 pillars? Let's go over that.
Let's go over that.
It's sleep, nutrition, and movement. Those are the physical pillars. Then we've got emotions or stress. We've got our mental state and health, or thoughts and mindset. We have relationships and community, and also the sense of purpose. All those 7 things actually have molecular biology proof that they extend life and they reduce your chances of getting disease. And so, when I talk to people, usually emotional states, mental states are a little bit harder to do. They're a little bit, we have to go deeper into that person. And
Yeah.
people sometimes don't even realize they're living in the matrix. So that usually comes a little bit later. It's easier to do maybe some of the physical things like, sleeping a little bit more or eating a better diet or just moving a little bit better. And here's the awesome thing is they're all energetically connected. If you work on one pillar, you'll find that you change your biochemistry and you start to feel better, and it makes it a lot easier to do some of those other things.
Yep. Yeah, man. And I love that you corrected me, because I said, hey, like, what's one of the 7 pillars? And it's like, Joel, you need to do all 7. Actually, that's the 80-20. Like that, if you did all 7, you're going to get 80% of your results. And then there's the few that, yeah, you might need to go see a functional medicine doc to get the other things tweaked out, but you can get 80% of your results if you just did the 7. So I'm glad that you brought that back. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also want to just talk to you about weight loss. Here you are, because I work with a lot of weight loss clients. You were overweight. You were type 2 diabetic. It blows my mind because I look at you, I'm like, this guy's super fit. What's he talking about? There's no way he was type 2 diabetic. I see on the cover, you're like this. Come on, I'm like, no way. But what's some advice you would give someone if they're just starting out, or was there anything, that really helped you? Do you remember, like, was there like a conversation you were having in your own head at the time, and it just really helped you get your metabolic health in order?
Yeah, so a great question. And it goes a little bit deeper. I worked on the physical aspects first. I was a burnt out physician who worked like 100+ hours every week, chugging down Monster energy drinks chock full of sugar, multiple cups of coffee with like several hundred pumps of International Delight in there. So I was not living a healthy lifestyle for sure. And so I just started off moving a little bit more, intermittent fasting, eating better quality food, and then sleeping a lot better. And those things reverse very, very quickly. But here's the other thing is once those things change, I started to work on deeper issues. A lot of times people are where they are right now because, they live in a matrix. When we are first born, the first couple of years of our life, the first decade of our life, our brain forms something called the default mode network. The default mode network is actually the part of the brain that's going on when it's resting. Okay. So if you're not actively paying attention to any particular task, that's the thing going on. And guess what? This default mode network takes on all this information from your parents, from society, from culture as to how you should be living. And that is basically your reality of the world. And if you don't know you're living in this matrix, which is really other people's thoughts and minds that you got basically until the age of 10, you don't realize that maybe you can create a life that's different from that. And for me, again, all those stories of not being enough, not being worthy in that default mode network. And if you don't realize you're living in this program that you could do something different, it's hard to make those changes. And so wherever you are in your life, it just might be a set of programs that you're used to living. But if you recognize it's there and there's another possibility that you can move forward, that now gives you the power. Now you could say, oh my God, this is the way I was living before. I could see that. I could see, oh, there's that craving. I get that craving because, I'm a little bit sad or I'm a little bit bored. And you start to recognize those things. You can say, oh my God, that's the old program. Let me pause for a second and choose how I want to live thereafter. And so, after I started to notice some changes in my body, I really started to recognize how did I get it, into that position in the first place. And again, recognizing that we're in the matrix is super important.
Yeah, man. I mean, you said so many key things. I love too in your book that you dove a lot into emotions and mindset. And I find when people with their health, there's always some emotional component. There's always some mental component. And I think especially as guys, we like to think like, oh, emotions, like that doesn't matter. Like it does matter. And I'm like, I talk to a lot of these guys and I'm like, well, but you've been doing the exercise, you've been doing the nutrition for the last 2 years. You've been getting the same results. So clearly it's something else. What else is it? And some guys aren't willing to go down that path, but you really lay it out and like, no, this is necessary. And you even talk about using plant medicine as being a very beneficial factor in your health and restoring you and getting you into the thrive state, which I thought was great that you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we take a look again at all those seven things, and to make it easier, we could call it five things. We can call sleep, nutrition, movement, all in physical. So we have physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual. All those things are energetically connected. If I look at somebody and they look, overweight to me, I know they already have some insulin resistance. And I know their emotions and their mental state cannot be as optimal as they are just by looking at them, because I know their physical's down. Everything is connected. And so here's the thing: if you bring one thing up, the whole energetic of the system will come up as well. And like you were saying, sometimes you reach a plateau in your results because you're not working on some of those other things. And if we want to dive into it a little bit more, I don't want to say, hey, you need to be happy-go-lucky all the time. That's not really what I'm trying to say here. But our emotional states determine basically our hormonal state as well. So you can react to someone. Can you get upset? Yeah, you can get upset. Can you get sad? At something when you watch a movie. Yes, those are all normal reactions. However, where is your emotional home? If your emotional home is frustrated, irritated, angry, hateful, if that's your emotional home, basically that drives up the stress hormones. The stress hormones will drive up inflammation and will drop your immunity, and then you'll start getting chronic symptoms and chronic disease. Whereas we know the emotions of love, of joy, of gratitude, of connection, all those positive type of emotions, particularly that of gratitude. They've done studies where people who lived in that state of gratitude lowers the inflammatory markers in our body, and it also helps preserve our telomeres. And so that's why the emotional states are so important. So, I have some exercises in my book and my course that talks about, are you auditing your emotions? Can you see where they're at? Because can you start to reprogram how you feel about certain things? And that's why the mental states are so important too.
100%. Yeah. You can't change anything without the first step being awareness. And so well said. I'm curious, if someone comes to see you, they're like, Dr. Vuu, I want to come work with you. Man, I heard you on this podcast, The Hack Life. It was amazing. What is like some of the first things that if I come to see you, like that you're going to want to know about me, or is there like blood tests that you'd like to run or top biomarkers that you're looking for? I'm just kind of curious, like client comes to see you, what does that look like?
Yeah, most of the clients that come to see me, they're typically mainly men, actually. Most of them are, over 40. They are very successful. They're CEOs, actors, and things like that. And they crushed it in sort of business and life, but just not their health. And so they were pretty much like an identical version of me, potentially in different industries.
Yeah.
And so they'll typically come to sort of like get their edge back. They just want, they were like, hey, you know what? I was super successful doing this thing, and I want to still be super successful and crush at this thing. And so that's what they normally come with. They'll come with that, and they'll normally come with, hey, I got more weight to lose and things like that. And we do a full series of panels where we're checking their metabolic health, we're checking their cholesterol, we're checking all their hormones, we're checking at micronutrients and seeing what's off. Usually they come in with, some sort of metabolic dysfunction like insulin resistance. Some people are diabetics as well. So that's typically the profile I get. And we work on all the physical things. And here's the thing that after, working with me for a little bit, they'll start to say, wow, it's actually how my life is driving all these things.
Wow.
And yes, there are hormone doctors out there. There are like these anti-aging doctors out there. All they do is just like, dish out hormones. But if you're not addressing the reason why they're precipitously dropping, then you're basically just, using a Band-Aid with the things that you are doing.
Yeah.
And it's really having them understand, oh my God, it's how I'm living my life that drove this process. I need to do things a little bit differently. I need to start focusing on things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I love that. I love this regenerative medicine. I love the TRT replacement. I think it's great. But I've seen men with low T that are on TRT. So it's like you said, it's like having, I think of it like a gasoline tank. You have a hole in your gasoline tank, and instead of just plugging the hole, you just keep filling it up with more gasoline because you're like, well, at least, the car can still run.
Absolutely. Now, men are going to be dropping their testosterone levels beginning at the age of 30, maybe 1 to 2% a year. And so by the time they get to 40 or 50, it's probably going to be low. But if you're living a life that doesn't focus on those seven things, it's going to drop much, much faster than the next guy. And that's not my approach. My approach is let's optimize those seven things first, see where
Yeah.
you're at, and then let's give you just enough for you to start feeling like you're in that thrive state again, and not just like, people out there like, oh wow, you're low, continue living your life, we'll just crank up the testosterone.
Yeah.
That's not the right approach.
Yeah. Agreed. What are some, and what are some cool things that you guys are doing in your clinic, or what's just something that is exciting you about like some of the regenerative space and that things that you're starting to add into your clinic that you just see that's really like cutting edge and you're excited about?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so weird. There are so many advances in the longevity space. We've got stem cells and exosomes, and those are basically two new tools kind of in the regenerative medicine space. So, regenerative medicine is really the medicine that allows for healing, but using your own body's sort of, uh, mechanisms. Like
Mm-hmm.
PRP or platelet-rich plasma is something that is taken from your blood, and they spin the blood down, and in there's growth factors that help with healing. Stem cells are basically things that are in our body. They live in our bone marrow, they live in our fat, they live on the arterial walls, and anytime there's any kind of injury or inflammation, guess what, those stem cells get turned on and they go to the site and they help the healing process. And so being able to get stem cells and put them in injury sites to help people heal naturally is a very exciting thing. But it's a little bit of the Wild West out there in terms of stem cells and exosomes and that technology. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it's very well regulated at this point, but
Interesting.
it's still very, very exciting. So that's regenerative medicine. We have a bunch of technology in the diagnostic realm now. I mean, some people can get full body MRIs to see if there's any tumors that are happening so that we can address it early. Remember, a stage 1 tumor is much easier to treat than a stage 4. So if you can catch it early, great. The number one killer in America is heart attacks or cardiovascular disease. There are basically scans that you could do now, like a CT scan that actually scans your heart to take a look at all the vessels, and they could actually look at which vessels contain plaque that might rupture to give you a heart attack. So if you see that early, you could treat that with lifestyle or potentially, place a stent up if necessary. There are, liquid biopsy exams, just a blood test that you can take to determine, the cancers that you can't see with a full body MRI because they're too small. You might be able to catch them doing this liquid biopsy with something called the Grail test. So there are all these diagnostics that are there. There is gene therapy now where you can actually edit genes that are faulty by taking out a base pair and inserting a new base pair. That's gene editing. Super, super exciting. You can also grow lots of different organs, with scaffolding now, so that, when organs fail, you can use that. All this is super exciting. All this I call the science of longevity. And, I refer people to those as necessary. But I think with all this going on, the one problem, if we focus too much on technology, some people might say that technology has really shifted the way people live their life, and some would argue that technology makes us more distant with each other. We're not connecting. Technology makes it easier for us to eat a lot more food. Technology makes it as such where we're not moving naturally every day. And so when we look at where people live the longest, the book The Blue Zones, written by Dan Boyner, he has 5 populations there: Costa Rica, in California, Okinawa, Japan, Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, and Sardinia in Italy. If you look at these 5 places where people are living up to 120, they don't have access to any of this technology. So there's also something beautiful about the art of living. And that's what the book Thrive State is all about. It's how you live your life actually creates this energetic field that your DNA listens to moment by moment. And that energy, other people feel too. Like, I felt your energy when you came on. I could tell that you're living a very vibrant life. And that's the whole thing, is how we live ourselves will, affect the entire planet. And what I would love people to do is wake up from that matrix, become that beautiful self, so that you can pop off other people to wake up as well.
Yeah, man. I love that you said that, because especially in the biohacking world, one of my big beefs with biohacking is well, one, that we try to sometimes just hack everything. I can just hack my way out of a problem. And a lot of times I see it takes mastery to really get there. The other thing though is, biohacking can get addicting. You buy one machine and you use it for a week and it's like, oh, that was fun. And then you go buy the next machine. And I've noticed that too. It's like, I'm never really fulfilled. And I'm like, at the end of the day, if I just mastered my mind and really got into this state of presence over and over again, all my other problems, I don't need to biohack anything. And
Right.
so you hit it on the head, man. So
I love
beautiful.
the fact that you said that, because if I were to say what the number one thing is to master, it would really just to be that. Master your mind, master your awareness. Understand, are you going in from that autopilot matrix mode, or are you truly choosing the life that you want to live? Now that takes a little bit of mastery to get to that place where you actually know, oh my God, there I am sort of living in this program, to be able to see that. So that requires a lot more mastery. Mastering your mind takes a lot longer than like going to
Yeah.
bed earlier every night, you know,
Yeah.
but that would be the thing, because there are people who've mastered their minds so well. And I use this quote from Viktor Frankl all the time. Now, people don't know who Viktor Frankl is. He's a Holocaust survivor. He saw his father being starved to death. He saw his mother murdered. He saw many other friends and family members tortured. But he still had this to say. He said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and freedom. Anything we want in life, the life that we want to create, is basically the result of all the choices that we make. Now, they could be conscious, meaning you actually pause and think and look at your mind, you actually create those choices, or they're reactive, And I was living a life that was reactive, basically living in that matrix life. And the thing is, when you're in that life and you're living in the matrix and that's not really who you are, your body knows that.
Yeah.
There's going to be some misalignment. Oh my God, I'm stressed out all the time. And guess what? You're stressed out. You'll need to cope. What do people cope with? Food, alcohol, drugs, porn, smoking, whatever it is. They'll do that, because they're not living that life that's like aligned with them, a life that lights them up. Because when you live that life, oh my God, like you don't need those little extra things that you'll need to cope with because you're stressed out.
Yeah. 100%. Real quick, in your book, with everything that you packed in there, was there anything that surprised you most in your research for coming out with the book? Was there like one thing? Maybe it was what you just said, mindset. I mean, that was beautiful, but I'm just curious, was there anything that like you're like, holy cow, like really? Like I read this study and that's wow.
Well, I would probably say yes. And it's going to basically be, part of my second book is really understanding a little bit more of our brain and the default mode network. That is something that is a survival part of our brain. So it's basically our autopilot. It's used to help us survive. Like if I touch a hot stove, I'm going to flinch, right? And the next time I touch that hot stove, I don't even have to think about it. It will flinch. It's that automatic part of our brain, and it's there to keep us safe and to help us survive. But guess what it does? It will also pick out everything that is potentially dangerous. So all your negative thoughts, all those limiting beliefs are in that default mode network. And the thing is, it drives so many people. And so if you could understand and see that and be able to quiet that down, your ability to live the life that you want, your ability to recognize that you are made of the same stuff as the stars, and that you are, a God particle yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing. And the next book is really about, how do you upgrade your default mode network and how do you quiet it down so that you become who you really become. And one of the things you did talk about is psychedelics. Psychedelics. We're talking about, DMT, we're talking about psilocybin, LSD, and things like that have been known to quiet those things down. I wouldn't necessarily say, for anybody, go through that, because there's other ways of doing it. I find breath work to be an amazing way to quiet down that default mode network as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. My next question was going to be, hey, what's next? The Thrive State's out, and you've got some amazing programs surrounding it. What's next? And you just alluded to you're working on another book. So
yeah, working on other books. I just want to get the message out there that at the end of the day, you are your best medicine. And so I look at the chronic disease statistic just skyrocketing, not only here in America and all over the world. And it's just because people have been living in that matrix. And what creates that matrix? It's all this additional social media and all these different messages bombard you, making you think life should be lived a certain way. And how am I going to do it? I'm going to be Neo and jump into that matrix. So I want to use media and entertainment to help wake people up. And so that's really going to be what's next. Is I'd love to basically have a show that combines elements of Oprah, Dr. Oz, Tony Robbins, Jimmy Fallon, and Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Right, all those, and then really inform people of a way of living that's new. Inform people that you can break out of the matrix, and in that space, that's your true self. And if I could see more of those people in the world, then basically the world will be a bunch of superheroes. And I can't wait to see how humanity evolves when we get to that stage.
Yeah, exciting. I want to wrap things up. I want to go into a couple lightning round questions, but before I do that, anything I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
You can ask me. No, I think we covered a lot. I mean, I could talk about anything for forever. So, but I think we covered all the major topics.
Yeah, awesome, man. I'm looking forward to connecting with you at the biohacking conference too in September. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait to meet people live. So definitely come up and say hi. We'll take a few shots together.
Oh yeah, man. I'm going to give you a big hug. It's going to be oxytocin. Like you said in the book, we need that tribe. We need that connection. It's huge, right?
Absolutely.
All right. You ready for some lightning round questions?
Shoot it. Oh, when I meant shots, I meant pictures, not shots of.
Yeah, healthy. Dr. Vuu and I are talking about health here. I'm curious, if the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
Yes, the new me would say, picture me, envision me, and have that integrate in your body. And every decision you make it from the point where you see me. There's a beautiful book. I know these are lightning rounds, but I'm just going to throw
no. Yeah. Take your time, please.
That Benjamin Hardy wrote called Be Your Future Self Now. And it's really about, we actually have access to our past self and future self at any time. And how would life be different if you looked at yourself in the future, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? What is that best version of that person? And if you bring that into your present moment now, how would you live life differently? Like, after I read that book, I was with my daughter, and sometimes I'm like, I got so much work, I'm working on my phone while I'm spending time with her. And I remember reading that book and said, wow, is that how I would spend my time? Would my future self be doing that right now? And it said, no, it's be present there with her, enjoy her. The moments you have with her at this age are going to be so limited. And so I found that to be super, super special to do. And I think anyone going through a health journey yourself can look at yourself as a healthiest version of yourself and have that person talk to you and have that inform your choices now.
I love that. What are some choices that you think you made that made you who you are today?
Wow. I think every single choice makes you who you are today. And again, it could be conscious or unconscious. And don't worry if it's unconscious, because I've been making unconscious choices now for 30 something odd years before I finally became a little bit more conscious. Yes. Don't get me wrong. I got that default mode network, firing off. There's still that old programming, but if you catch it, you could do something about it. If you catch it, you're like, oh, okay, that's the old me. How am I going to respond? This happens, in my relationships where I have to catch myself that, like, oh my God, I just reacted. Can I let my partner know, sorry, I just reacted. That's not me. This is who I choose to be. And the more you do that over and over again, you're going to solidify this new habit. And that's how you upgrade your operating system.
Yeah, man. Marriage and kids, I think, will really challenge that default mode network. But if you are in tuned and you want to actually listen and you want to learn, man, a lot of growth, a lot of good things can happen from it. A lot of people don't want to though, and they go the opposite way. So yeah, I agree. Who's someone in the health and wellness and the biohacking world? I mean, you're such a force, man, to reckon with. But who's someone that inspires you? Who's someone that you actually look up to?
Well, you know what? Some of the people that inspired my early work were like Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief, which really got me thinking that our minds can are truly, truly connected to our biology. And he was probably one of the first people that talked about epigenetics and mind, body, and spirit connection at the molecular level.
Yeah.
So he's somebody I really look up to. Other people in the space, uh, in the health and wellness space, so many docs. I mean, Dr. Mark
It,
Hyman.
it could be mindset stuff too, because I mean, I know you're very, you're very
Yeah, you know,
eclectic. So yeah.
I'm a Tony Robbins fan. You know, Mark Hyman, Peter Attia, David Sinclair, all these people, inspire me to understand more molecular biology. But again, I like bridging the science with the art. And
Yeah.
so, there are shamans out there that and spiritual teachers that really resonate with me as well.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you too, like any books, are there any, I'm a big reader. Are there any top 1 to 3 books that just stand out for you, or other than the Thrive State, of course, but
Yeah.
is there anything that you'd say like, man, go out and read this book. It had a tremendous impact on my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I would probably say, one of the first books I read when I was going through my transformation was The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani.
Yeah.
He lays it out pretty well too. He talks about the default mode network without actually saying the default mode network. He talks about something called the culture scape and really, how people are currently living their lives, but that's just created by people that potentially are just reacting. They're not really truly living something different. And so that book really allowed me to kind of question, am I living a life that I'm creating, or am I living a life that I've been programmed to live?
Yeah. That's one of my favorite books too. So love that. Last couple of questions. We'll wrap things up. You know, any rituals or hacks or practices that you like to do on a regular basis?
Yeah, absolutely. Breath work. I do both shorter forms and longer forms. There is, I do Wim Hof in the morning. It energizes me. It puts me in state. Then there are these longer ones. I get a good friend, Curtis Lee Thomas, who teaches something called breathwork detox,
Hmm.
which is typically a 30 to 40 minute session done with music that really guides you into this journey. And I find those two practices super invaluable because it actually quiets down the default mode. And I know my default mode just gets me stressed out.
Yeah.
And most people with a very active default mode tend to be anxious or worried or have some of these mood disorders as well.
Yep. Last 2 questions, Dr. Vu. And I stopped asking this question. I was asking a lot during the pandemic, but your book, I feel like I have to ask it to you because your book was like birth during the pandemic, essentially. Like you had it, like you were going through some challenges, and it really forced you. And so I wanted to always put a spin on the pandemic. And so when I was doing all my interviews during 2019, 2020, I was asking folks, hey, I want you to finish this sentence. 2020 was the greatest gift because ...
2020 was the greatest gift because the universe really made me swallow my medicine. I remember writing Thrive State, and what had happened was I had this multi-million-dollar house in Silver Lake that overlooked the Silver Lake lake, as well as the Hollywood sign. All that when I was this full-time attending interventional radiologist. I sold it all, joined all these different personal development programs and things like that to upgrade myself. And here I am, I've got this concept and idea of writing the Thrive State. And I actually had to move from that home to my parents' home, which basically had security bars all around the house. It has a really shitty yard, and there's 2 liquor stores at the end of the block. And when the pandemic happened, my fiance, who discovered that she was pregnant with my child, she had a 6-year-old daughter at the time. They had to move in with me. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, and I'm writing a book called Thrive State. I'm like,
Yeah.
I am not thriving right now. I am not thriving. And people, and they got to move in, and all my bank accounts just went boom, or sorry, all my assets like dropped. And I just remember, how is this thriving? And it hit me when Kira, my bonus daughter, moved into the house, and she was just glowing because we did up her room. There were security bars, but we like lined up some frosted stuff in the windows so she wouldn't see the security bars. I had this like old hospital type bed that like moved up and down.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this is a transformer bed. She's like
Yeah.
jumping on it. My little shitty yard. She's like, oh my God, this is an awesome yard.
Yeah.
And the thing that I was shameful about, or the thing that
Mm.
just made me feel so bad that I wasn't in the thrive stage, she reminded me that I was just out of my mind, and the pandemic really gave me time with my fiance to really connect deeper in our relationship. It allowed me to open up my heart to a brand new family that I was starting. And again, that moment just reminded me that we get to decide what story we say about ourselves.
Yeah.
And that story will shift our biology. You tell yourself an empowering story, your body's going to be flooded with hormones for optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. You tell yourself a shitty story. Why did this happen to me? Then you'll be stressed out. Inflammation will go up. It will drop your immune system. And so really it was a taste of my medicine. I was at a point where I was like, geez, how am I thriving? But the pandemic, and I think that's what it did for most people. It just slapped people in the face and say,
Yeah.
there's something that happens in the outside world, yes, but what's happening here? What's happening here? What's happening here? You have the power to control,
Yeah.
and that was the gift in it. And
Huge.
I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm really glad it happened.
Yeah. Wow. That's so amazing. Last but not least, where can people find you and your good work?
Well, great question. I just started a new Instagram page at Dr. VMD. And all my work is, could be seen on my website, kienvuu.com. And yeah, all the links are pretty much at those two places.
Awesome. Dr. Kien Vuu, great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me.